Kia ora, my name is Jay. Thank you all for taking time to attend our next mentoring working group meeting. As has been mentioned, Nate is currently unavailable. He's on vacation. So it's asked just to take the lead for this one. Yeah, please feel free, as mentioned, to drop in anything that we have in the agenda that we want to cover. And of course, we will be observing the CNCF code of conduct. So yeah, please maintain all levels of respect and all the good stuff. Ironically, some of the things I wanted to touch on today was just a little bit about revisiting the focus, I guess, from some of the stuff that was raised in the charter previously. And just to see, because obviously things have been evolving pretty quick, and both with obviously the formation of the mentoring group itself and with a lot of developments that are starting to pick up quite quickly with the tag contributor group as well, and just ensuring that there's still some synergy and you know, observing where there is overlap of those sorts of things, that we're mindful of that too, so we're not replicating any efforts unnecessarily. And one of the things was also mentioned around the content and the decision making of some of these meetings, and with the regularity of them, just ensuring that yeah, that everyone's sort of clear about what the purpose of these meetings are, and ensuring that we're, you know, any actions and things that we're taking, that we're still moving things forward. Some of the things are sort of, you know, they picked up so far is that obviously from some of the goals and everything that was originally outlined, basically it's a matter of increasing participation with numbers and diversity, and code and non-code contributors, and the quality of the mentoring itself. So it's you know, some of the things we highlighted in terms of systems and communication channels and opportunities for mentees and mentors to build stronger networks and all that sort of stuff. So just with some of the others who have reached out, they've suggested, you know, opting into things like you know, perhaps taking the lead on CRM. I think Alexander, you might have put your hand up for that one, to establish some sort of systems to support on the administrative side. But I just wanted to open up to, if, you know, as things, as I said, have started to take shape, if there's anything else that we think we should be sort of observing, or you know, perhaps including in this sort of focus as things continue. Oh, cool. Everyone's pretty happy with things are at.
I think I didn't find another channel that wasn't a mentoring on Slack. I don't know if that's the only one for the mentoring stuff, but we are getting some messages from GitHub and the GitHub app. I don't know if we can split that to a different channel, like having the automatic messaging from GitHub on some channel, and having like conversations only for like real people, and not the apps on a separate channel. I don't know if that's already planned or not. Just so we can like have some conversations there without interruptions from
being
like
inundated.
Yeah.
Question about the configuration of that app. Can we, instead of spamming the channel broadly, can we assign a thread that is the thread? So if you're interested in the notifications from GitHub, you can, you know, follow that thread in Slack, or is it only configurable to do main channel broadcast?
I don't actually know if
sounds like something we'll need to possibly look into. I agree. I've kind of stayed away from that channel for conversation points because it is a bit noisy with the PRs.
Cool. So just
we could.
Oh, carry on, man.
We could maybe have a for example, now we have the mentoring, that we keep that and leave the GitHub app bot out, and then create another one, for example, mentoring slash, I don't know, bot or PR or something else, and then can like anyone that's interested in getting notifications for GitHub stuff can like configure that channel, and then we can leave the mentoring one just for a conversation around the actual people. And
Yeah, I think
but
it's a
I
great
don't
idea.
know if we can configure the bot to only post on threads. I don't know, but I guess that wouldn't. I don't think that's currently possible. We have to check.
Great.
I guess it's easier to just have a separate channel instead of trying to like learn how to configure the
Yeah, as
bot,
mentioned,
at
there's
least for the.
quite often a little bit of noise in there. So I just want to
You're muted.
clarify
Hippie.
exactly what you mentioned before, Hippie, around establishing a thread perhaps as well. Just wanted to...
Here's my thoughts. We need to get with Nate, who I think is normally here, and need to co-chair on that. But I'd say disable it, and for the people who are interested, do the normal subscription or notification, unless there's a broader consensus beyond. Like if Nate has a strong opinion, I say we keep with Nate was here before. But if there's not a strong consensus, if there's 3 people coming in toward the beginning that are like, this is a bit noisy, so I say we just kind of put an email thread or even create a thread in the CNCF tag contributor strategy channel to say, why don't we disable that? And we can figure out the technicalities of disabling it if that's what we want to do.
Cool.
Yeah, I was actually thinking more tag contributor strategy notifications, for example, to actually have a separate channel for it.
Okay, for the whole tag.
Yeah, it's just because there's a lot of notifications, and I understand wanting to see them in Slack, but they also kind of mess with being able to have a conversation with the collaborators.
Josh, what's the best way to go about initiating that type of infrastructure change?
Well, I don't know who's maintaining the bot.
I don't know either. It'd be good to follow.
Okay, I mean, I think the answer is we're
to
probably going to
follow
need
up.
to wait until Nate comes back.
Yeah, beautiful. That's fine. We'll make sure we have an action item to catch him on when he gets back.
Yep. Yeah, it's just, if I learned anything, it's better to keep sort of automated channels and discussion channels separate.
Yeah, 100%. Because if you're trying to, if you take, for example, the tag contributor strategy channel, if you take that as an example, we kind of have conversations that are not only within threads. So if you're talking to someone and then a bot notification comes in, it makes it difficult to like keep a conversation, and not everyone knows how to use threads, and like, so it would be helpful to separate those two.
Yeah, well, and my opinion is that the thread UI for Slack is pretty bad. So the
I second that.
Cool, that sounds good. So so the plan in the meantime is perhaps wait until Nate's back to review all that and see what options we have in the meantime.
Yep.
Cool.
Yeah, well, let's not lose track of it.
Yep. Awesome. And just want to check in quickly if there's anyone who needs any support with any actions that have been discussed previously. There's a couple of things around. I've got to catch up with Nate definitely when he's back around some of the administrative stuff. And there's a couple of people who have put their hands up for different things, but yeah, just in general, is there anyone who's sort of needs any support or any particular focus areas with things like, I see the LFX is picking up soon. There's been a couple of discussions around systems and things. Have you got your hand up?
Yeah, I've got a question around. I'm getting a lot of direct interactions with lots of people wanting to do the project stuff.
Yeah.
But I'm not sure the next steps. I haven't been through it. And right now I've just been saying, hey, here's the GitHub page, here's the submission to LFX. And now I've got people dropping me resumes and front end, like, front cover letters and stuff. And I just want to make sure there's a clearer path. And if I were doing this with another group, I think we'd like to have a clear understanding of what the steps are, so they're not. I feel a bit overwhelmed by it, and I want to make sure that as LFX or the Linux Foundation. Thank you. Okay, thank you very much. Oh, no. Close it. Rain, close it. Sorry, I stepped out into the car to have supply. Yeah, that's it. I'm just trying to figure out what to do with my possible, I don't know what they're called, applicants.
Yep.
And what type of communications and expectations set at this point, because obviously there's too many for me to take on.
100%. Yeah, this is definitely something I need to catch up with Nate about as well. I think that's something that he's been sort of picking up a bit more, and also we discussed a little bit in terms of with perhaps Uche and that coming on board about how some of that sort of stuff is going to be separated and best managed. I've seen some of your things come through recently as well. So
we maybe can. I think we maybe can. I don't know if there's like a formal way of doing that right now, but we could just plug that into the idea of having like a database or some type of CRM stuff that we just send a form and they fill it out, and like when we are ready, we can start taking a look at the what they sent, instead of they trying to reach out specific the people.
Yeah, it may be that it's just not clear to them what the steps are. I just redirected them to that submission, the form process, or submission, but yet they're still kind of wrapping around. I'm not saying no. I'm just saying, sure, here I am. So apply here, and then they're continuing to send stuff to me. I just want to make sure that we have I mean, I'm fine with it, but I want to make sure that as other projects go through this, that it's a little more what their steps are a little more obvious. That says after you've submitted, redirect your applicant, people, interested parties to this URL. Have them send everything there, and then they'll get looked at over the next 5 days. So I'm assuming we have to choose the people because they'll end of this next week. It starts September 15th. Some guidance for mentors and submitters.
yeah, agree fully, because that's something I need to be clear on as well, because we've had some expressions of interest here in New Zealand, and we'll be doing a bit of an information session to walk through some of the basics, because it's going to be a bit daunting for some as well. And so it's something that's I'd like to be really clear on before we start walking people through as well, so they don't encounter the same sorts of barriers. I like what you said, Alexander, about perhaps setting up a CRM, and I think you mentioned in the past if something like HubSpot was practical for something like that. Is that still where your head's at, or is there another perhaps short-term fix that isn't too difficult to implement? We
can use HubSpot or Airtable, which is another form of like database that has a nice user interface. Or we can just like if that's not enough, we can use like the simplest thing would be a spreadsheet. The bad thing about having a spreadsheet is that if you the more you use it and store everything within it, the more difficult it will be to like change the system afterwards. So we can go with just a spreadsheet for now, or the Airtable would be easier, and then we can start thinking about if they're like, depending on how much information, how much submissions we get, we could start thinking about using a more complex and more complete system, but using like a simple version for now, and understanding the flow of what data we're getting and how much we're getting, we can then decide if we want to change to a more complete system. So Airtable or spreadsheet, and then because HubSpot is good, but we will have to have people that understand it, so they can fill out the information in or not. There may be there may need some training involved to get to that. Yeah, bottleneck. So having like stuff that people are already used to would be the way to go, at least for this first phase.
Alexander, do you know the existing CRM process or flow or where that data is going? Is that some internal LF system? Are you suggesting a separate second system outside of that, or that help me understand a bit more?
Yeah, I don't know the what is being done for the current system. So I'm suggesting what I'm suggesting would be outside that, but we can understand if there's already something built for that, we can just use that as well.
I think there's some legalities around because it is an employment for short term, that because they technically become short-term employees of the CNCF, there's some privacy things that we have to deal with. And so maybe we'll wait for Nate to come back, and I can connect with him to see what possibilities we have for a secondary piece. And then we'll look at that in a few weeks, if it wants to know. We'll do it when he gets back.
Yeah, for sure.
Cool. Awesome. And yeah, I guess was there anyone else wanted to add anything else to that for you? All right, cool. And I guess this is something we're just sort of developing things. So at the moment, we've had a couple of events in the past sort of week and a half. We'll sort of dropped in there in some of the updates. So yeah, really quickly did the Canvas Expo in the last sort of week and a half. Last sort of Thursday we did another one, straight to the source, which was working with some of our schools and local businesses and local councils. So thank you, Leon. Also, you dropped the link into that for anyone who's curious. And I said on the back of that, we've had a couple of expressions of interest, both for the LFX mentorship and perhaps sitting the KCNA certification, and we're looking to do a bit of an information session. What we've sort of found is sort of putting that out is that as suspected, most people are sort of unaware of even what open source is, let alone cloud computing and the mentoring initiatives themselves. But some of the key interest has been from tertiary students in the local polytech and university here who are keen to get on board. But I guess that there's a bit of still sort of wrapping their heads around about what it means to contribute to open source, and just this idea of even getting involved in sort of global initiatives in that sort of sense. So we're going to run an information session at one of our next meetups, and probably the next one, the next one's tomorrow, so it's not probably practical now, but it's just seeing if there, in addition to anything that we'll be covering, if there might be anyone who could be interested in perhaps zooming in, whether they had something to add into themselves from their own experience, or to talk to some of the processes or things. I know Uche has sort of put his hand up to talk about that from a graduate mentee perspective. But yeah, just in terms of helping other people to sort of flesh out their context and give people an idea, just want to extend the invitation to anyone else who might want to be involved in the future as well. And part of that is just we'll be putting together a bit of a blog and a bit of a breakdown of some of those interactions as well, about helping to develop the messaging around some of these opportunities. Because as I said, there's been a lot of initial interest, but in terms of finding the right level to be able to communicate what's going on, there's still, I think, a lot of work that can be done there. So from the outset at the moment, is there anyone who wanted to jump in on any of that? Or I hope you got your hand up.
I was just saying it'd be probably good to break down specifically what you're wanting better messaging on, and what you noticed about the current messaging and what you think the new messaging might be, so you have this list of things to set up to, rather than generally things are difficult to understand for some groups of people.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, so I'll put some stuff in writing, as I said, so it's a bit of a back reference, but yeah, some of the things in terms of there's been how can I put it? One of the biggest sort of misunderstandings I think for people is this idea of you know, gaining employment or work opportunities from contribution. It's a little bit of a foreign concept as opposed to the traditional sort of methods of attaining employment and going through the, you know, as you said before, mentees are sort of putting through, you know, CVs and all that sort of thing. There's this idea of yeah, this idea of sort of, you know, showing up and chopping wood and you know, carrying water and all that sort of thing is a little bit of a foreign concept there. And yeah, you know, you can talk to that from a little bit of experience, but I think someone who's perhaps, you know, been in the scene for quite a bit and can actually break down about how those contributions become recognized and can lead to you know, employment, that industry actually directly involved in a lot of this sort of thing, because it seems yeah, because everything is so open, it seems a bit of a disparity between what people are most familiar with.
That particular one, I'd write that one. So you could get a list of things like that, but for that particular one, I would suggest getting stories.
Yep.
Because you just need people and what they went through, because it is all anecdotal. And then after you go through and have that list, there are patterns that you could show, but it doesn't have the compellingness without the stories. And we probably need to find those people who did start from you know, contributing through to finding the previous successes to help bring some credence to what you're trying to do. But don't stop there. I'm sure there are others in that list. Let's make sure to capture that full list of things that are difficult for people to pick up if they haven't been immersed in it for a long time.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I've like I said, we've got to actually we're going to put together a bit of blog and a breakdown of the past couple of events and some of the learnings and things that we picked up, both from those interested in contribution and some of the local businesses and things as well who want to gain a bit more understanding. Even CNCF wasn't known to a few, you know, businesses and things like that. So there's a lot of curiosity there. So yeah, like I said, I'll put together a bit of a list and share it out with everyone.
Do you think
Alex, did you have your hand up? Sorry about that.
yeah, do you think being more do you think there's a difference there where we can either be we can be both, but I see a different path here. One is like being accepting and outreaching and requesting that like forms and people wanting mentors or wanting a mentoring experience. And then there's the more active side that we go and reach for people that we see are contributing and maybe we see they're struggling with something, and then we actively reach out to them and see if they want to like participate in the program. So do we have any does any of you have any thoughts on like those different journeys? One would be like the journey of we just get the content out, the documentation, the request for people that want to join, and then the other one being more we as the working group being more active and reaching out to people that we see may be a good fit for the program. Like, do you have any thoughts around that? Like having those different journeys there?
There's definitely a need for both sides. And before this group was joined, inside the Kubernetes community, we were trying to find ways to create like a mentoring app or a scheduling that says, here are some people who have some, you know, they it's not public, the whole list, but they go through and they say, here's the times that I'm available for mentoring. then having other people kind of sign up to be and trying to do some type of matching and suggestions for those times. But I think we need, there was a want to do more of a mob mentoring. So I think I'm trying to think of ways that we can. I think what we're doing with the current LF and the list of like the CNCF mentoring folder with those initiatives. I'd love to see which ones are successful, like with the measurement of success of involvement from the project, and see if there's any periods of growth or the differences. Because for most projects, they probably don't know this exists. I think we're at 130, 150 somewhere in their project. And this is one of the things that we offer to our projects. And I think if we had a series on both sides, I think if we would at the end of each, as often as reasonable, tell some of these success stories. Here was a group that needed these particular things to move forward, and they got more contributors because they took on some mentorship. So that's what the projects are looking for: is people to come help us carry chocolate and carry water. Here's how you hold it. Here's the well-worn trail. And then the mentees are looking to level up in their skill set to be able to find gainful. Most of the work that try to find gainful employment. And if we can highlight those in a blog post and maybe some interviews or something, that would help combine those two paths together, and try to, as much as possible, make it part of the flow, so that every mentee and mentor has at the end the time to wrap up. And if they had a particularly good, want to amplify that voice for others, giving them access to someone to help them put together that story and turn it to a post, so that we can, fan the flame.
Yeah, that's awesome. Did you have anything else you want to add to that, Alexander?
No, just that I was like thinking the back of my head, like having those different ways that we can engage, but that actually answered some of that and helped me get a good sense. I think that fits into like, we have to have some type of strategy to try and build a community and culture around the mentorship, so that if you get mentored and you like it and it's positive for you, and then you want to move that forward and like be the mentor for someone else, and then that someone else actually has a positive experience, and then go ahead and bring more people so they can mentor, and we kind of build a community flow there. I think would be we gotta focus on having some type of strategy to make that happen. I don't know how yet, but what Ricky said is something around that as well. And yeah.
Yeah, no, I agree completely. I think there's this, from what I've sort of observed so far, there's so many different elements. I think there's still a little bit of lack of clarity in terms of the entry point for a lot of potential mentees, and how we're sort of onboarding and stepping them through the process, how we're sort of engaging mentors, and obviously there's been talk of a survey and everything to give it a better understanding of that. But having a bit of a strategic oversight, perhaps even flow charts and things, just so people can sort of see, have a very sort of visual glance in terms of, I start here, these are the potential sorts of ways forward, and what sort of stage, what sort of support to me is available throughout that, as opposed to just the process sort of stuff, how are things actually, connecting and building with the people. And that's some of the things that, Uche was sort of mentioned in the past about, facilitating more regular meetups and things like that, so that people actually feel like they're going on a journey with their community as they progress through their training, and not just focusing on the, you know, the project development itself. Because I think it's going to be a really important thing in terms of, you know, not just, you know, retention, increasing chances of success in the program, but obviously, you know, we're trying to create this loop, this cycle. You know, ideally with mentors, mentees are ideally going to become future mentors and things too. So yeah, how we sharpen that up is going to be really important. I'm actually going to start working on something like that the next sort of, you know, week or so. And I want to be able to discuss that with Nate, because, you know, as I said, we've got to catch up, and I got a bit more idea in terms of what things look like on his side, and you know, clarity with some of these existing processes and things, and see where there are opportunities between us all. We can sort of highlight, actually, that needs a little bit more focus here and here. And yeah, what are we trying to put out there around these, say, building a culture in a community, and what do we, you know, what are the sort of key principles or values or things that are going to, you know, that's going to stand up on. So yeah, that's a really solid point, man. Thank you.
Another one that I would raise, it doesn't have to be like, it's just something that we probably have to think about. I don't know if that's something that already exists, but having, I don't know if a platform or whatever to share knowledge, because when the mentorship program runs, there will probably be like similar questions from similar groups and mentors and mentees. So having some kind of knowledge base that holds like some of those similar questions or similar issues they're having, so they can, instead of having to jump to the mentor for every question or everything that they don't quite understand, they can actually I don't know, do some searching within that knowledge base. I don't know if we have if we do it in GitHub, but that may be maybe hard to follow along. So we would have to like understand which type of platform would be good for the mentee to actually go ahead and be proactive as well, and like learn from past mentorships and past issues that maybe had and are actually already solved. So that would probably be easier on the mentor side, because you won't have to like keep answering and going back to the same stuff.
What kind of knowledge are we talking about here?
So it depends. For example, it depends on the project or the. It would be mostly around the experience of the mentorship. So, for example, if they are learning a new technology or learning about a new project and the knowledge around that. So, for example, if you don't know how to, just giving a simple example, but I don't know how to make a pull request and what's the right way of asking permissions or whatever. So I'll go ahead and ask that. Next time someone has that question, they can like have a way of just searching, for example, how do I do this? And it appears like some of those questions, or we can have like some Q&As, some database for Q&As, and then like share that and categorize the questions. So, but that's for that we would have to like iterate over it with time, because it can be really complex if you try to like do something big from the beginning. So, but questions around every type of knowledge around that. So, for example, we could have another thing we could have is like every mentor and every mentee has a profile that can be public, and then you can go ahead, if you're interested, if you're just joining the program, you can look for like these profiles for mentors and mentees and learn from what they built, what they learned, and stuff like that.
Yeah, well, I think there's actually a couple of different things. because I mean, for the first thing, for most of the questions that mentees have, which is stuff like, you know, hey, if I'm making a pull request for this, do I need to submit tests as attached to that pull request, or can I submit them after it's submitted? You know, these sort of things. You know, or test X is failing. What does this mean? I mean, the real answer for those is contributor docs for the individual projects. I mean, that's exactly what's supposed to be in their contributor docs. So I was interested if there was a different approach to get those contributor docs written in a way that was less effort for the maintainers, you know, for the mentors, right? Because the main reason why contributor docs are inadequate is that people haven't gotten around to them. Matching up mentors with potential mentees is kind of a different thing, and is honestly something we could also use better tooling for, because it doesn't exist. Let me tell you, that's actually an issue, because like I've been trying to set up this one-on-one hour thing for Kubernetes, and I'm ending up monkeying around with, you know, Google spreadsheet automation to try to have something that works. Because, you know, I can't come around to actually writing full-on software. Although, annoyingly enough, I'm thinking about resurrecting a PHP project of mine from 2004 in order to actually do this. But those are kind of two separate things, right? Could they be part of one platform eventually? Maybe, yeah. But only for the first one, if we can come up with a route where it's like, okay, this is a way that you can document the things that people ask about faster and then assemble a contributor guide out of them. Which I can see being a thing, right? Because I mean, how many people out there have half-written PRs sitting around in a text buffer somewhere? One realistic problem is that we don't currently have a lot of help on building tools available from the CNCF LF.
We could, if so, we could, if we get from the point of view of the mentor getting the right resources to send to mentees, and actually helping the mentor find those resources, we can try finding a system that already exists, or if it doesn't, we can but we can probably find something that actually indexes, for example, the markdown documents that live in GitHub, and then have it on a platform that that has like a search features, so we can for example, if you want to help if you want to get the right documentation for related to how to do pull requests for this project, you actually have a search bar that you can search, and we have all the documentation indexed into that. That would
okay, yeah, I guess where I'm redirecting is, I'll say from ample experience, the main problem is that this documentation doesn't exist in the first place. It's not a matter of finding it, it's a matter of getting it written.
All right. Yeah, that's another issue then, because we'll then probably have to engage with the maintainers to, like, we can actually have a template of things that are likely to be asked and needed, like simple topic lists that a maintainer can just fill out and let us know, like, where the resources are, or what are the answers for those quick questions that you can just reference and use that as a starting point for getting the information. Because if you don't have it, we will eventually have to write it or get it from the maintainers. There's no way around it. So building like a template that with some questions that we can send maintainers, and then dropping that into some place that we can then build stuff upon it, using that as a
take a look at the contributor guide template that we already have, and check that out and see if, you know, where there's things that are missing or things that we could supply more detailed suggestions on. Because really, I mean, like, in the best of all possible worlds, each project is supposed to have a contributing guide, and that contributing guide should already have answers to 90% of the questions that a mentee is likely to ask. You know, and should limit it to the questions of, hey, I'm getting this particular test failure. What does that mean? Issues that require somebody actually knowledgeable to help them with. But, you know, it's not that long, and there's probably places where we could supply extra suggestions.
Cool. So ideally at this stage, perhaps making the contributor guide that initial sort of source of truth, and just making sure that mentees are able to access it easily. Ideally, we can keep sort of adding to that over time and refining it as we sort of identify more problems and opportunities for improvement. Is that right?
Yeah, and other places interactively with projects and that sort of thing, you know, in terms of because I mean, for example, in here we've got a section for pull request lifecycle, but it's basically just a big blank, because we couldn't come up with a way to suggest this for projects that was sufficiently generic, but still supplied them with useful guidance on how to write this up. You know, we don't, and that's not necessarily impossible. It was just hard to do. You know, and it's something that projects could really use, right? For this reason of, hey, you know, what are the real steps to submitting a pull request? Is clearly, you know, clearly a big question that technical or documentation mentees frequently have. And if, you know, there's a link to documentation there, but coming up with some examples for projects to use would help them along in big ways. Because the nice thing about having a really solid contributing guide document is, then whenever somebody starts a mentorship, the first thing that happens is the mentor says, read this guide, right? And that eliminates a whole set of questions. One of the things I was interested in from Alexandria's suggestion was, our big obstacle here is getting the guide written in the first place. So like, if we could come up with clever ways to turn a Q&A, right? Mentee, you know, Dan the mentee is asking the mentor this question. Is there some way when Dan answers that question on Slack, it can become a bullet point in a contributor guide without a lot of extra effort by the mentor?
Yeah, because then the work is like, we can reuse the work the mentor had to answer the question, so that it isn't like duplicated every time someone has some type of question around that. Yeah, so one of the things would be, like, before knowing what to pursue, would be actually knowing what are the resources we have for that, because I think we gotta think long term, and have the vision, but we also have to scope it so that we can actually do those things. So what in terms of resources, what we have, or what can we partner with some companies that may be interested in this, or do you have any developers that we can bring in? How does the research side of this works? How can we plan and understand more about the resources side of this, just so we can understand like how to scope have the vision, have a strategy to how together, but plan the resources to like build a timeline or a roadmap of what we're actually getting and how together. Because yeah, I don't know if you what are the guidelines or the what are the permissions we have for building like partnerships, collaborating with other projects or collaborating with other working groups, and how do we do that? How do we understand it better?
I don't know that there's any general policies. Obviously, stuff that requires money then requires the CNCF to want to invest in it. The stuff that doesn't require money, it's going to be kind of on a case by case basis, right? If we're collaborating with an open source project, it's pretty unrestricted. If it requires some kind of exclusive permissions, then it's a conversation with staff. I mean, my problem would be I don't know anything that even exists, right? So like it's the same problem in here as like when we started looking at it, like looking at matching up mentors to potential mentors to mentees. We were like, is there anything that exists even within like proprietary services that we'd have to pay for this? And we really weren't finding much. We weren't finding much that didn't escalate to the level of enterprise HR software, which was just out of scope. So our biggest thing is actually finding out, right, does somebody have some kind of a knowledge base app that would help us with the building a contributor guide, so it's just a matter of, right, because the goal here is to optimize the mentor's time, right? So is there a way that the mentor can copy and paste the response they wrote for one mentee and drop it somewhere that it then just requires a couple of approvals to turn it into part of, to have it added to the contributor guide? I don't know of anything like that. So the first thing would be finding something. If it's a matter of building something, then it needs to be something easily enough that either our volunteers or existing staff can handle it. Just because I know for things that are going to be built by LF, they have a lot of empty positions in the LFX staff. They have a lot of critical things like the main LFX mentorship app, the one they use for running the LFX program, needs a top to bottom overhaul. And so that's going to be a priority for them over anything we come up with that's less time critical. So, so yeah. So this starts with ideas.
Yeah. So when we build the right, get the right structure and where we want to be. After that, how do we proceed? Like, is there? So, from what I understand, we can actually go for if there's nothing that we can use for that long-term vision, we can actually try and get budget from the CNCF staff. So that would that be a possibility? That at least from what I understand, that would be, but we would have to like build a case and understand if that fits into the CNCF vision and what they accept. But would that be something that we can strategize if we see that is something that we need?
I think one of the things.
Jay?
Oh no, you go.
I was going to say yes. Again, it depends on the case and the amount of money. If we're looking at paying for a service, then we would want to have a specific CNC project that's interested in using it.
And if go ahead, Jay.
No, you got it, man. I'll jump in the end.
So if you're paying for a service that already exists, we would need a project that also needs that besides our own needs, or
Well, I mean, who's
we'll
our
have
own need? I mean, it depends on which sort of thing we're talking about, right? The like, well, no, you need a project of some kind, right? Now, in some cases, those projects are actually owned by the mentorship working group, but in other cases, they're not. Like, for example, we're talking about this knowledge base thing that's really for the CNCF technical projects. In which case, we would have to have one that was interested in using it. Because we're not going to pay money for something that, you know, we then might tinker with for a while and abandon. Of course, it always depends on how much money, right? If it's a service we can sign up for $5 a month, they'll probably say, go ahead, try it for a year. But then there's also internal things, right? If we're trying to match up mentors and stuff for one of the New Zealand programs, that's also a possibility. It's just, we were just talking about the knowledge base thing, and the knowledge base thing would be more for, you know, the CNCF sandbox, et cetera, projects, rather than for the New Zealand community or other, you know, mentoring outreach programs. But if we're looking for something for scheduling and matching up mentors with mentees, then we might use them for like Jay's programs, in which case, yeah, we can ask.
Yeah, and if we need to build something instead of paying for a service, that would be possible as well, but probably be a lot more work to get approved and whatnot. But is that so? We have paying for a service as an option, and would be like actually getting a team to build something possibility as well, or just we just have the option of finding something that already exists.
I think one of the things that's that seems to be recurring from our meeting today is that it'd probably be really good for us to do an inventory of what currently exists and what is needed. So in this, you know, it's hard to sort of know exactly what to develop if we don't have a clear understanding in terms of, you know, what is already in place at the moment, what are the processes, what are the, you know, the systems and things that are set there to support them, and, you know, where, yeah, is there a need to build anything anymore, or is it a matter of just sort of optimizing and just adding to and refining what is already there? I'm conscious of obviously everyone's time and everyone's ability to be able to build that sort of stuff, when it's, you know, perhaps there's a lot of those you know, those puzzle pieces already there. It's just a matter of putting them in the right sort of place so people can get the picture. So yeah, I think if we start with, you know, what are the core things that we need to know, which is, you know, ideally, what is the processes for new mentees? I said, you know, Hippie raised that the issue of like there's heaps of enthusiasm there, but even, you know, for those people coming on board, you know, he's getting inundated with you know, correspondence. They're saying, oh, I want to, you know, perhaps skip the queue, and, you know, here's my CV, and could you throw a job at me now? All those sorts of things. That's, you know, that's highlighted sort of immediate problems, or we can, you know, perhaps develop a bit of a solution to. And I think, you know, in terms of some of the things that you talked about, I think, you know, especially when that volume sort of picks up, having something that's going to perhaps, you know, manage that, you know, that traffic and things like that is going to be really important. But I guess what I'm hearing, and please anyone feel free to correct me, that there's quite a few things out there. It's just making sure that it's consolidated, easy for access, easy for mentors to be able to say, cool, here's where I can ideally, you know, chuck in some of my resources and knowledge and things. Here's how it's really easy for mentors to be able to pick up and run with. Mentees, sorry, to pick up and run with. And yeah, I think we'll probably be able to sort of better sort of pinpoint, okay, that needs focus there, and that will sort of, you know, and ideally it's that perhaps that, you know, that Pareto principle, that sort of, you know, the 80-20 rule. It's like, where's, you know, the one or two areas that we can focus on that's ideally going to have the biggest sort of, you know, ripple effect and benefit across the board. So yeah, because yeah, I mean, I'm obviously
scoping
still
the part.
Yeah, I think that's probably yeah, just from the last couple of meetings, things we had, I think it's actually quite a big space already, and there's, you know, been quite a few things that people have sort of put forward in terms of like, this needs a little bit more attention, and this would help us to get a bit more, clarity around to be able to move to the next sort of point. So I think if we, spend a bit of time in sort of identifying, okay, it's, these 3 or 4 things that actually probably need, we need to emphasize the most. What are the things that already sort of exist around that? What sort of, small actions or efforts can we make to sort of perhaps improve the effectiveness of those? And then as we go, we might be able to say, like I said, if as you see, if there's a matter of developing a new platform or system or something like that to better optimize that, then then we can ideally be able to go to CNCF and just sort of say, hey, we identified the need, and is there scope for funding or support, resource to help develop that. But I think it'd probably be a little more difficult from the outset to be able to say, hey, can you chuck some money at this one until we like really understand the problem and what we can do about it. That's my thoughts at the moment anyway.
Yeah, and we can experiment with like the little parts that are more easily done right now for us, and then like when we are thinking about building a more like future-proof and whatnot to actually scale, then we can go ahead and see what we actually need for that scaling problems.
100%. I mean, it's and this is the thing as well, is that even though this working group is obviously really new, this isn't a new sort of focus area for people. I mean, I've some of Paris's past sort of blogs and things around the issues and difficulties around scaling mentorship and how to do that. And I think it's like there's a lot to learn from people who've already sort of put their time and effort to try to understand and improve this space too. So I think it's sort of consolidate a lot of that sort of information. I think we'll have be in a really good position to be able to understand what's the logical sort of next steps around this. I've just become a bit conscious of time. We've gone a little bit over. Is there anything else that and I've got to catch up with you anyway later this week, man, so we can continue the conversation too. But is there anything else that anyone wanted to add before we finish up? Oh, cool.
All good for me.
Cool. I've got a few actions to follow up on the basis on the back of this. So thank you all for your time again today. Always appreciate catching up. Always good learning from me as well. Enjoy the rest of your days, and we'll catch up again soon.
Thank you all.
Thanks, everybody.